Welcome back to another video. Today I'm explaining the second generation Pyrokinetics from Fireforce. Of course, the second generation Pyrokinetics are people who have adapted to spontaneous human combustion. So instead of becoming inferno through the bugs, of course, they awaken the ability to manipulate and control existing flames. As with the third generation, they sport higher physical abilities as well as being more resilient to damage along with natural immunity to flames. However, unlike third generation, they cannot generate their own flames. So mostly they are manipulating the third generation flames to much of their own benefit in battle. Anyway, second generation Pyrokinetics possess the ability to manipulate pre-existing flames, whether it's ordinary fire or fire produced by first and third generation Pyrokinetics. Some members of the second generation are powerful enough to manipulate flames on a large scale and from far away, as we see with Benimaru, who is the strongest example of that, and Maki, who's like the example we see over and over and over again. Anyway, like the ignition abilities used by members of the third generation, it seems all second gens use their ability in their own unique way. This includes amplifying flames for greater attack power, redirecting flames so as to avoid injury and or property damage, as we know. Except for Benny, he doesn't care. The unique abilities they use are known to somewhat depict their personalities, as Maki is a brawler type. Anyway, second generations are known to be more skilled in the manipulation of flames compared to third generation Pyrokinetics, unless you're Arthur. Example of this, Kareem being able to remove heat from his surroundings to create ice, and Sharon being able to convert kinetic energy into thermal energy. Maki is even able to grant fire sentence. Their ability to control outside fire gives them an advantage in battles against other flame users. Such generation as Maki, Oze have been noted to be ineffective defense or counterattack when fighting against the third generation. They're perfect in defense. Anyway, this list of second generation abilities: Maki Oze, she dubbed Sputter and Flare. Her fireballs can be altered in size and shape or be merged into a single creature. Through such an ability, she can redirect fire attacks. We see Hinawa Takeshi uses his ability through a pistol, which he has dubbed Velocity Control, and it is to control or change the direction of his attacks. He can also ricochet his bullets, increasing their velocity and penetration force. Also, Kareem Flame, as we see in their fight, he used thermoacoustic refrigeration, allows him to generate ice through his musical instrument as he collects heat energy inside and decreasing its temperature, and by repeating the loop several times, he creates ice. We also know Benimaru. I explained this in a different video. Benimaru video will come out first. Anyway, there's also Giovanni, one of the fire captains. He uses his mechanical hands as projectiles. He can launch them, extend by a long wire that can be heated and even burn through tree branches and retract them. He is also looked at as like the traitor from Fireforce, but it was Captain Burns. Is Giovanni a traitor? Dang, it's been a minute since I've seen the whole show. We also see Sharon, one of the evangelists and one of the people that have to protect the pillars. He's incredibly strong. As Sharon uses his second generation ability to absorb and accumulate kinetic energy into his body from any attack and transform it into thermal energy to attack with. There's also Amon Hakiji. Amon had eyes that allowed him to see thermal signals in his vicinity and even behind walls and clothing. Of course. Now that's all the second generation abilities that we have been introduced to and that we see. Of course, the series is over manga-wise, so we probably won't get a lot more abilities like this, unless there's a Fire Force movie that comes out, when in turn, non-canon, but we get to see more abilities like this. Of course, like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Welcome back to another video. Today I'm explaining the third generation Pyrokinetics from Fireworks. Of course, the third generation is the most popular generation, and it's the one we see the most. Of course, it's Shinra is the third generation, Arthur is a third generation, as well as the dark-skinned dude. I'm just forgetting his name. Drop his name in the comment section below. Anyway, let's jump straight to it. The third generation are a classification of individuals that have adapted to spontaneous human combustion, and instead of becoming infernal, they awaken the ability to generate their own flames either from their body or through a certain object, much like Arthur does with his sword, and Shinra does through his feet, as well as Benimaru being able to use both. As with the second generation, they sport higher physical capabilities as well as being more resilient to damage, along with natural immunity to flames, so they could just go kick an inferno if need be. Because of their unique abilities, third generations usually become fire soldiers in the special fire force. Of course, it is not necessary. There's probably multiple third generations that are not fire soldiers, but we just don't know. However, unlike second generation pyrokinetics, they cannot manipulate already existing flames. That is sort of true, but even then, Arthur is still able to manipulate his flames through the sword. Granted, that has to do with more his ignition ability rather than his pyrokinetics. So he could technically be classified as third and second, other than Benimaru, of course. Now, their ignition ability. Every third generation has a unique way of utilizing their flames. This method is referred to as an ignition ability. Their ability allows users to generate flames from certain body parts such as their tongue, fist, or parts of their feet, and so on. Some third generations use their ability through an object of some kind, such as sword hilt, as we see, or bubblegum. These objects can utilize the flames in special ways and give the users interesting powers. For example, Gold uses her gauntlet to turn heat into magnesium, as we've seen in the previous episodes of this season. Check it out. It's a great show. Of course, the abilities of a third generation are not limited to only basic flames, as they can generate electricity, superheat their flames into plasma, as we see with Arthur's sword, that's plasma, not flames, and produce explosions, as we see with Shinra, and stimulate the cells in a person's body. If they have enough control over their flames, and shape their flames into weapons, armors, or other constructs, as we see with Dragon, or even energize themselves and increase their physical abilities and the physical abilities of others. A third generation is the only generation that can become a fourth generation. Second generations cannot do that, as they can also the third generation ignition abilities can also create mirages or make people succumb to high heat, or an electric shock user, as we see with Hamiya, being able to control people and send messages through the electricity that naturally go through their brain and nervous system. Hamiya does a version of this. I wouldn't say she mind controls you. She mostly manipulates you to believing something. And then again, Captain Burns did see the evangelist, the thing, right? The light lady. So she he gave his thing for the faith. So of course, if a third generation possesses an adult burst, they can become a fourth generation if they receive an adult grace. Now, their only weakness with the power of igniting their flames, it also comes with some drawbacks. The flames from a third generation emits are fueled by the oxygen in their own body, as we see with Conroe. If their ability is overused, like Conroe, that they'll no longer be able to use their ignition ability until they've regathered more. Repetitive use of the ability under such oxygen deprived conditions could lead to the body beginning to char, and the user can gain a lung disease from it. The condition is known as nephrosis. We only see one case of that in Conroe, Benimaru's best friend, who was as powerful as Benimaru when he was active. But he could still use his pyrokinetics. He just doesn't unless it is truly an emergency. Like Benimaru's nowhere to be found. Anyway, if a pyrokinetic contracts nephrosis, of course they will no longer be able to use the ignition ability to the same level and time duration that they previously could. Of course, Conroe. I may do a video on Conroe. He has a lot to do with stuff. Anyway, like, subscribe. This was me explaining the third generation, and I'll see you in the next one. Welcome back to another video. Today I'm discussing the fourth generation pyrokinetics. First, it will be an individual video of each version of the kinetics. I don't know what's the release order of them just yet, and then it will be a compilation. So don't blame me if one of these days it is a compilation. Anyway, Let's jump straight to it. The fourth generation, as dubbed as Hamuel, is a pyrokinetic individual who has awakened their Adola burst and connected with an otherworldly being through the Adola link and or their doppelganger. Anyway, it is not fully explored, of course, throughout the story, just because it really, when you get into those kind of villains, they're at the end of the story to be all that powerful. Anyway, a fourth generation ability is an ignition ability that a select few third generation pyrokinetics are able to achieve in order to utilize a fourth generation ability. A pyrokinetic must possess an Adola burst and have received an Adola grace from an otherworldly being such as the evangelist or the woman in black. Of course, the woman in black that we refer to has been a long-lived human even before the first version of the Great Cataclysm. So I guess she's human? First human? Do human. Anyway, while the Adola Grace is active, those who are part of the fourth generation gain an immense boost to their pyrokinetic abilities, where, as we see, for example, Shoku Sakabe is able to slow down the flow of time by decreasing the heat that all for the natural expansion of the universe. And Shinra, of course, can accelerate past the speed of light, causing his body to disintegrate into particles, though it is regarded that he does not use this ability at all, just because it is simultaneously breaking apart his body and putting it back together, putting him in that extreme risk. So he rarely doesn't use this ability. A fourth generation ability, of course, is dependent of the Adola Grace, which the otherworldly being can revoke at any time. So if you have been granted this ability, it can be taken away. It hasn't been shown that it can be taken away, but it is said it can be. Furthermore, that being must be as strong to sustain the grace. Otherwise, the fourth generation ability can only be utilized for a brief time. Also, Lick or Victor Lick, that these seemingly impossible abilities carry side effects that are dangerous for both the user and the world around them. As of course, Shinra ran the risk of manifesting a black hole, and Sho's body being exposed to extreme cold when it cools down the universe would have put him at extreme risk to basically die because of his ability. Though that these have been warned and have been told to both of them that you can die by using these abilities, and Hamuya too, as she is able to connect to the other world simultaneously. There has never been shown any drawbacks. Of course, when they use these abilities, it is the end of the story, so there is no drawbacks as we have seen, and that would normally result from the defiance of the laws of physics actually occurring. So we have never seen a drawback. We'll never see a drawback as the story ends. Anyway, only we get is warnings and the principles. Of course, we do see Shinra end up in the hospital after Sho fight, but that's mostly towards the injuries from Sho, not even from the ability of disintegrating and putting himself back together. Anyway, that was me explaining the fourth generation of Fireforce, and I'm gonna jump straight into the third generation. So I may release this in the opposite order. Don't blame me if I do. Anyway, like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.